So who is the real Andrew Tate? A misogynist, a fake Muslim, an international criminal?
Well, he said in the podcast that we done, the most recent one, that the UK system are now after him. And it relates as well because Channel 4 in the UK also released a documentary. They tried to poison the public minds that this guy's an evil person, misogynist, etc. When I spoke to him about it, he was just saying, yeah, UK are going to try and put me in jail. I think there is a chance of him going to jail.
Andrew Tate and his brother have once again been detained in Romania.
CEOCAST is one of the biggest podcasts to come out of the UK, interviewing multi-millionaires and even billionaires, and of course both of the Tate brothers. He's obviously said they're going to put me in jail. They did. And then he's now saying they're going to put me back in jail. And he doesn't too much go into publicly why. He just says the Matrix is after me and stuff. Behind closed doors, is he ever opening up on like, what do they want? Like putting him in jail, what do they want from that?
The reason why... things that you see on media are most likely complete garbage, especially if we're talking about Palestine and Israel. What media portrays is completely different from the truth. What's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. And what we see right now is a genocide, and obviously that's completely wrong. The media portray it as a two-sided war. The conflict between Gaza and Israel. It's not conflict, bruv, it's genocide. Literally mass
men
murder.
With sticks defending their kids.
We've seen videos of the guy walking up with a white flag, resembling peace. And they just shot him. He's asking for peace, and they just shot him there and then in cold blood. Have you ever seen that video on the news? No. And you won't see it on the news either, because that shows in itself the truth.
What have you understood as the Matrix? Because he's always tapping on it, but I've never got like a definition.
Obviously.
Ladies and gents, welcome back for another episode. I am joined by somebody you've probably seen if you watch podcasts. Probably one of the fastest growing or one of the prominent podcasts within the UK, Mr. CEOCAST, better known as Raheem. I've been watching you for maybe 3 years. When you were a lot smaller, actually, you came up. I was in the UK at the time.
Why didn't you just watch me for the first year, no?
You didn't come up, bro. If you came up, then I would have watched it. But,
no, I appreciate you.
But you've also had some sick guests and some guests I'm envious of. So part of the episode I want to discuss on like how you land or network with certain names, let alone Tate and the hugest names, but even just like the CEO of Brabus and I want to talk about your journey of growing a podcast, but not necessarily because that's for me, but also for people watching of like just being able to navigate in the online space, collab, because you can't do a show by yourself. You always need other people, high level guests, and how you access cool people, because for a lot of people, they want to access a mentor, access someone cool. And I think that's something that you're able to do. Mm-hmm. And then just your experiences meeting these kind of people and also your own journey and potentially moving over to Dubai. Yeah. I think there's a lot to unpack. But the first thing I want to say is this collaboration. I just did an episode with you joining me. This is off the back of you. As in, I've wanted to do this and you've kindly given the opportunity.
I appreciate having me, bro.
Why have you viewed it as like not a competition of like, we could say we're competing podcasts? Why are you open and willing to just exchange and be friends and also appear on each other's platforms?
I don't believe in competition. I believe, as you said before we started this podcast, collaborations are better than competition. If you guys can collaborate with each other, I can share my audience with you, you can share your audience with me. At the end of the day, that's what my whole podcast thrives off. So why am I now going to go and think, okay, Waqar's got a podcast, I'm going to stay away from him because he's just going to come and take my audience? It doesn't work like that. If we could work together and build something together, and the audience are going to stick around regardless, right? You know, whether they watch my podcast or whether they watch your podcast, we've got different guests. So it's not exactly like we're fighting and all that sort of stuff. We're in complete different, we're in the same game, but we respect each other enough to be like, okay, cool, we can collaborate, we can do this, we can work together, we can hang out off, behind the cameras, go out for dinner. I don't see any issue with it. Same with other podcasts as well. I've just done a podcast with Riz, very good friend of ours. He's in the podcast game. Granted, he is in the trading space game, number one trading podcast. But once again, collaborations galore. I'm always about collaborations. I love collaborations. I
agree, bro. Like a lot of influencers, especially, maybe even celebs. Celebs are a different league, but influencers, they're like, they work so hard for their audience, as you have, rightly so, and you could feel very protective. Like, it's my people, it's my audience. I worked hard for this. I spent 5 years grinding away, and then some guy comes up and he wants a piece of it. You can feel very protective over it.
The other thing I was going to say, just the one thing I'll note on there as well. The other thing I will say is people are scared of competition because they think, okay, cool, that person can overtake me.
Steal everything,
He's going to steal everything. But we'll get into this later on. But I'm a man of God, and Allah says, we believe in rizq. What's written for you is written for you. No one can take that to you. No one can take that from you. Nor can you take it from someone else. So what difference is it going to make anyway?
That's
if
true,
we
bro.
collaborate or anything like that?
And I also realized, man, like. podcasting, influence, a lot of the online stuff, it's not a and space. It's not like Raheem or Waqar. It's an and space in terms of like it's Raheem and Waqar.
Yes, exactly.
I don't watch one podcast. I watch a bunch.
Same.
I don't
same.
I don't watch one movie. I watch all the movies.
Yeah.
In that sense, like it's a mutually beneficial thing, and I'm sure there's a lot of value.
Bro, the amount of people have messaged on a random basis, yourself, Mike Thurston, many other people, just in the car, just Snapchat, snapping the podcast saying, "Yo, I'm listening to your podcast right now. It's sick." Because I can't listen to my own podcast in the car. I don't like that. So I'd rather listen to yours, Mike's, or my good mate Mikey Mellin, many other people who I listen to, and I think it's sick. Why can't I do that?
Actually, now that you mention it, the Blue Tick Show, Mikey, is a good friend of yours and could be a competitor, but...
Yeah, no, he's my brother.
Exactly,
that would never, ever be competition.
Beautiful to see. Now, the flip side of that, because how many episodes have you done by now in your podcasting career?
By the time this releases, probably 150, I want to say.
Oh,
maybe.
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And how many years has it been?
4 years. I started in January 2020, pretty much.
Okay, and just a tangent. Talk to me about the subscriber count because it probably hasn't been steady. It's probably been a bit like this.
Yeah.
Talk me about like year 1, year 2, year 3 and 4.
So year 1, I think within... All right, so officially I probably started in December 2019, right? And then we went into lockdown. By the time we came out of lockdown...
That's the worst time to start a podcast.
But it was also a great time to start a podcast because everyone's at home and looking for new things to watch.
So were you doing it online, like Zoom podcast?
Yeah, I hated the quality of it.
Yeah.
And the people I've done a podcast with on Zoom, most of them, I sat back with them after the lockdown and done one in person because I feel like they deserve that respect. But lockdown, barely grew any subscribers, nothing like that. And it must have been about it was 8 months, I remember, because I'd done an Instagram reel on this, 8 months until I hit 1,000 subscribers.
Oh, that's brutal, bro.
Yeah.
Fair play to you. And you were doing like weekly?
Yeah, weekly, grinding out weekly and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Still trying to find my path of what I'm doing and everything.
And it didn't bother you, like 3 months in, you're still like 500 subs or 300 subs?
No, I believed in myself heavily from the get-go. I knew that one day that, inshallah, this will 100% pop off. And it did, to be fair. So hit 1,000 subscribers within 8 months. And then after that, I remember within 2 weeks of that 1,000 subscribers, I hit 10,000 subscribers.
No way. What happened there?
I honestly, looking back at it, I'm not too sure. I done a podcast with my brother, Mikey Mellin. And that podcast took off. So I was used to a point where we're getting 100 views every week. And then this week, we got 10,000 views. I think then I learned the title, the whole game of title and thumbnails and stuff, because I titled it 20-year-old owns biggest restaurant in London or something along them lines, exactly. That done a whole load of views. So it was great for Mikey and it was great for me as well. But then off the back of that, then I had contacted Lord Raheem, who's also a brother now as well.
That's the first one I watched, actually. Maybe I've been following for longer than I thought.
So that was I think that was in August 2020, I believe, maybe.
That's the one in the Pet HQ.
Yeah,
I remember that one.
Yeah, no, what am I talking about? That's a lie, actually. By the time I finished Mikey's one, I was probably on 2,000 subscribers because I remember when I recorded with Raheem, I was on 3,000 subscribers. So, thanks to him, he came on. And I think after Raheem, then I hit 10,000 subscribers. And then, it just kept growing from there, man. Had loads of people on, had loads of guests on. Raheem's episode done really well. That done, till this date, 300,000 views.
And that was on a channel that had like sub 5K subs.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's killer. Yeah. Okay.
Do you know what I mean? And
what was it about his episode that led to it blowing up?
I think, generally speaking, two Asians collaborating, doing this podcast, it's not something we're used to.
Yeah, true. And he's a big name as well.
100%. I always wanted to do a podcast with him. And naturally, you could tell me this as well. When you know so much about someone before you do a podcast with them, doing a podcast with them becomes a lot more natural.
Yeah.
You just speak like you've known them for years.
Yeah, with the LA Weekly and all that stuff,
exactly.
you feel like you're a friend.
Literally,
Fair enough.
And off the back of that podcast, we built a great connection. And that was really good, man. That was really good. But off the back,
I saw you drove as a Bugatti, actually.
No, I did drive his Bugatti. No way. No.
What was when he was in Dubai last time? Well, you were in the Bugatti.
Yeah, I was in the Bugatti. Yeah. We
enough.
went for a drive. That was when we filmed our second podcast, and then literally straight after that podcast, jumped in the Bugatti, went out for a bite to eat.
It was kind of crazy. There's only like 2 people in the world that we know has a Bugatti, like publicly, Lord Lehman and Andrew Tate.
Yes.
Have you been in Tate's one?
In this day and age, prop firms is the best opportunity for traders. But the problem with prop firms is a lot of them have major red flags. Too large commission, too large spread, huge percentage percentage gain targets. Alpha Capital, on the other hand, has some of the best trading conditions in the industry with $0 commissions, minimal slippage, very competitive spreads, and Alpha Capital is one of the few prop firms that has never denied a payout, and they have a clean reputation, which is why I'm proud to be working alongside them. Using the link in the description or the code TOT, you can go ahead and get any challenge for 30% off.
I haven't been in Tate's one, no.
But you've collabed with Tate. You've collabed with the two Bugatti owners.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Two Bugatti
What's the
owners.
Bugatti like? Like being in it is as fast as you think, or
Bro,
is it?
it's next level. You can't even fathom. I can't even describe to you right now of what it's like being in that car. Being in that car, it's like a rocket ship, yeah?
You've been in supercars.
I've been in
seen
supercars and stuff, but
Lambos,
nothing
Ferraris.
compares to a Bugatti. Nothing compares to the way that takes off, the way that sounds, the way that makes you
Sounds
feel.
like a rocket ship. It doesn't even
When
sound
you're
like
in the car, granted I was in the passenger seat, but it's still in the same place. All you can hear is that turbo spool, like just...
Yeah.
And bro, it sounds sick because when you hear that and you've just gone warp speed, the windows automatically close, I think about 100 miles an hour for aerodynamics and stuff, and you're just flying. And it's one of them ones where you have to brace your neck because...
Oh, you really slam back.
Yeah, you can't move. You can't move. If you're accelerating and you try and move forward, you can't do it. It's not happening.
That's wild.
So, it's an experience on the half.
Just to know, have you been in a Tesla?
Yeah.
And because I've seen these videos where the Tesla smokes the SVJ or smokes an Urus.
Yeah.
It's just normal Tesla in that super...
Yeah, the plaids one.
This mode, I forgot. I forgot the mode that it is in. What do you think that compares to a Bugatti? Because I've never seen a drag race of a Chiron versus a Tesla.
So Tesla will take it off the line.
Yeah,
off the line. But a Bugatti will catch up and
very
beat
quickly.
it. But I'd rather still be in the Bugatti all day long, purely because of the sound. Like, you get no emotion from a Tesla. There's no emotion in an electric car.
Yeah.
I've spoken to electric car owners who have had Teslas, they've had Porsche Taycans. We're going completely off tangent here, but Porsche Taycans, Teslas, whatever the case may be, and they're all different cars, but they feel exactly the same because they're electric. But you don't get that in your combustion engine
the sound,
cars.
the shift of the transmission,
Exactly,
all of these
yeah,
things.
yeah.
I mean, we are off topic, but I see you are a big car head. Whenever you're in Dubai, you pull up in a different car, and it looks like you have your own M4 as well.
Yeah.
Are you a big car guy? Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah. I've always been a car guy.
What cars have you driven? Because I know how Asian boys are with their
I
weddings.
don't know, bro. I don't know. I've driven many cars. I wouldn't be able to tell you off the back of my hand.
What's your favorite that you've driven? Not the Chiron maybe, but what you've driven.
I don't know.
You don't have a favorite?
Generally, I don't know.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, let's get back onto a bit of the topic. So the reason I asked the subscribe. Oh no, let's finish the subscriber milestone. So you had an Aleem one that took you to 10K, let's say, and then you're at like one. What are you on at the moment?
140K.
140. Okay, so there's a big space there. You 10x your audience.
Yeah.
How long did that take?
Well, it would have taken 4 years basically, because right now currently on 140K.
Okay, it's been steady. It's not been like
it's
a
been
big
steady.
jump.
Yeah. There's not been. Although obviously the other big jump was Andrew Tate's one, because when I filmed with him, I was on 40K, and then within a space of a couple of weeks to 3 weeks, a month, whatever it was, got to I think it was 70, 80K, and then it was steady again, and then. But to be fair, after that, there hasn't really been any massive incline or anything like that. Any surge.
Slow and steady.
Yeah, it's just slowly.
Talk to me about the Tate effect, because he brings views, he brings a presence, he benefits, almost doubles your channel. What has that experience been like? Let's say round one for now, because we know what's happened since as well.
Round one. Okay, so what's the question exactly? What we asked?
Yeah, just the Tate effect, like being around him, meeting him, and what it did for you. Because obviously people saw the subscriber jump and the views, but also what it shaped you in your life. I know some behind the scenes stuff as well, if it's worth mentioning. But yeah, just the experience with Tate.
I think if we're talking podcast wise, there was a lot more brand awareness than ever before. People known my face way more off the back of that podcast than anything. Anywhere I went, people were just like, "Oh, you're the guy who done the podcast with Andrew Tate. You're this person." Like, there's so much recognition beyond it.
Do people recognize you even now in the streets and stuff?
Not so much now, because that podcast was 2 years ago, so I think it's just fizzled out a little bit. But I think now that there are new podcasts come out, we'll see what that's like. But it definitely grew a whole lot of brand recognition, and it was almost like a statement as well, because you know, Tate doesn't go on every single podcast that approaches him. He only goes on selected few. So for you to get someone like Tate in the first place, you've got to have been doing something right for him to want to jump on in the first place, right? But the overall effect of it is just elevation, I suppose. If I had to put it in one word, elevation on another level. Personally, brand wise, and everything around you just elevates pretty much. So it's cool.
It was your episode with Tate that obviously did well. I mean, every episode of Tate does well, but I think yours one did maybe better than the other ones at the time. And you mentioned a viral clip off the back of that. Why do you think your episode did perform slightly better than other Tate episodes at the time? Because he wasn't a Muslim at this point either, was he?
No. So, but I don't think the Quran, me giving them Quran, had the reason to do why it done better. I think the reason why it done better was because the other podcast Tate had gone on, they had probably been more professional, right? In the sense of you're talking like your Patrick Bet-Davids, or you're talking about your Piers Morgans, or whoever the case may be. You're talking about these caliber of people who are suited and booted, older, a lot more wisdom. And for me, if we're comparing it to that, it's more hood. So it's almost like a guy from the ends just managed to get a podcast with Tate and having a chat.
With another guy from the ends.
Yeah, so it's just the complete opposite spectrum. So I feel like that's another reason why I done well as well, because it's a relatable guy talking to Tate, not your Patrick Bet-David, who's, billionaire talking to Tate. It's a relatable guy. And I think the people, appreciated that and liked that, the fact that just a normal person just managed to do a podcast with Tate, which was quite sick.
And rightly so, but how did you pull up like a normal guy? You had a subscribe account and such, but how did you, at the most subscribe account, and Tate was obviously selective. How did you pull that off? Just
shot my shot, bro. So I'll give you the story of how that all happened, right? So I've said this before as well, but basically loads of people were just saying, do a podcast with Cobra Tate. This was back in 2021, I think it was. And I remember seeing his account. His account was like 60k followers.
Oh, whoa.
So
okay.
I've done research into him and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, yeah, cool. I'll do a podcast with him eventually in the future. A bit busy at the moment, but we'll get there. We'll do one with him. Little do I know who Andrew Tate will be at the time, obviously. But it all comes down to timing at the end of the day. And then fast forward into 2022, I thought, you know what? Let me message him. And he was on 120k followers at the time. So I sent him a DM, and he also had his email in his bio as well on Instagram, on his personal email. So I just literally sent him an email. I was like, yo, bro, I'll try and pull up the exact email at some point and show you. But I just said, look, hey, bro, I got this podcast. Here's the numbers. You want to come on, etc. He was like, yeah, just show me a few of the past videos you've done. Sent him Lord Liam's podcast, sent him my mate Chrono's podcast, and he was like, yeah, let's do it. Lock it in. And originally, he said that, he's going to be away for a while, traveling and all that sort of stuff. I was going to go to Romania to do it. So he was saying with his traveling and everything, he probably won't be back for another 4 weeks to a month. I was like, cool. As long as it's locked in, that's fine by me, happily. And then maybe a week after that conversation, I had seen him on Instagram story, and seen he had put on his Instagram story the M40 in the UK. I know what the M40 looks like. You got the blue motorway signs. I knew that was UK straight away. So I messaged him there and then. I was like, bro, I see you're in the UK. Do you want to do a podcast now while you're here? And he just literally replied just his WhatsApp number. So I was like, sick. Messaged him there and then. He's like, I'll leave in 2 days' time. Can you do tomorrow? And bro, at that point, I had to cancel everything I was doing tomorrow. I think I had maybe a couple of podcast shoots, whatever it was. Had to cancel them, rearrange, all that sort of stuff, do the Tate research, do everything, get a place sorted, which was hard because at the time I didn't have many connections in terms of restaurants or locations, podcast studios, all that sort of stuff. So luckily, a friend came through with a shisha lounge that he was opening. It wasn't launched at this point, but he was opening it. And we done it there the next day. So that whole experience, it just happened so fast, so quick. And I think that's why on the day when I had done the Tate podcast, I was gobsmacked, because it was arranged for 4 weeks in advance. And it happened.
It came quick.
Came faster than I could have ever imagined.
But you said he had 120k subs, but from what I remember, Tate was massive at the time when you...
Yeah, so by the time I released the podcast, he was on 1.2 million.
And how long did you hold off the episode then?
That was only 2 weeks. If that.
He blew up so quick.
Yeah, he blew up crazy rapid.
Okay.
So I literally, the podcast was perfectly timed. Like I couldn't have asked for better
filmed it
timing.
on his come up, and then by the time you posted
he was already up.
He was up.
Yeah, literally.
Crazy.
And
okay.
it was mental how that all happened basically, and that was all timing, and that's why I was just gobsmacked.
And what about just like the online version of Tate, which we all have seen, and the meeting in person? What was that contrast like?
Bro, he's exactly the same. He stands for the same morals, same principles, and everything like that. Yes, he may be toned down a little bit, volume down a little bit, but you've met him as well. He can easily be sat here right now, having a conversation with us, talking with us, chilling. Even when we've done the podcast recently in Romania, which we'll come to, I'm sure, we must have had me, him, Riz and the team, an hour worth of conversation before the podcast even started and after the podcast, just talking, chilling, how's life, all that sort of stuff. He's a very easygoing guy, easy to talk to, funny guy. He's just a cool guy, to be fair. Like, he could easily be a friend.
The first time you met him, there probably wasn't like a starstruck feeling or anything, because he was just another guest you've had, which was big, which you've had before. But then round 2, when you've just had him now, Tate is like the biggest name in the world. Did you have like a bit more nerves or like a different feeling? Or was it like, I know this guy, I spoke to him last year?
There was nerves leading up to it. Before we had gone to Romania. I was nervous. I was a bit ill as well, so that didn't help at all. The night before the podcast, I was a bit nervous. So we were just chilling, chatting away, me, Riz and the team, big up them lot, to get the nerves off. But then when it came to actually him pulling up in the villa that we had, all the nerves dropped, and I was like, this is normal. It's just Tate. Like, I've done a podcast with him already. Like, he's a cool guy. And he came out the car straight away. The first thing he said was, "Been a long time, sir." And I was like, okay, cool. Like, he already automatically knows who I am, the podcast is, and all that sort of stuff. So that kind of eased everything, because I did have a feeling of like, will he remember this podcast that I've done with him? Does he know who I am? Even though I've already done one with him, he's the most famous man.
People,
do you know what I mean? Like, you can forget people, but he instantly remembered there and then. So I was like, okay, cool. That's just eased everything. And at that point, it was just easy podcast to do, in a sense of it's just an easy catch up, easy conversation, no nerves. I think sometimes you can tell on a podcast where I'm a bit nervous, where I'm a bit like, oh, what do I do here, sort of thing. But I think I navigated that podcast quite well, to be fair. So that one, all nerves were good.
Well, at the time we're filming it, it's not out yet, but by the time this is out, that episode is probably out.
You haven't even seen it yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, so I'm not going to ask about it, because they've probably watched it. But what I want to do ask is the Tate presence. Obviously, he's made you feel comfortable and you feel normal now, because you've already spoken to him before. But you also mentioned right before we started shooting that he started to say you think he might go back to jail, and he's mentioned in the recent pods that I've watched of him, he's saying these kind of things. Has there been anything in your assessment to give you that opinion that he's going back?
Well, he said in the podcast that we done, the most recent one, that the UK system are now after him. So Romania have failed. They couldn't get him in jail. They couldn't get him, but now UK are after him. And it relates as well, because Channel 4 in the UK also released a documentary. And I spoke to him about this, and he was like, okay, what they tried to do makes sense, because they tried to poison the public minds that this guy's an evil person, misogynist, etc., all that sort of stuff.
What was that documentary? I didn't watch it.
It was just called I Am Andrew Tate.
And it's just talking nonsense? Or?
It was talking nonsense, but the trailer leading up to it, when they always do documentary trailers before it even comes out, it was showing his lifestyle. So I was like, this is interesting. It didn't say nothing about, the allegations or nothing like that, misogynist. Okay. It was just him and his lifestyle. So I was like, I wonder what angle they're going down here. Then it came out, I watched it, and I was like, full on trying to poison minds and everything like that. And then, when I spoke to him about it, he was just saying, UK are going to try and put me in jail. Romania have failed. UK are going to take over. So I think there is a chance of him going to jail, possibly. Obviously, I'm no one to actually say that, confirm that. But I think, I gather that's the reason why him and Tristan are going on a few podcasts.
Has he said like anything off camera of like, he's obviously said they're going to put me in jail. They did. And then he's now saying they're going to put me back in jail. They might do, hopefully not. And he doesn't too much go into publicly why. He just says the Matrix after me and stuff. Behind closed doors, is he ever opening up on like, what do they want? Like putting him in jail, what do they want from that?
To silence him.
Because whenever he's been in jail or back into house arrest, he still does pods. Now he's doing pods again publicly. People are coming to Romania. Is it just a silencing thing? Because they would have kept him in jail, or they could have done anything more drastic.
Silence him and use him as an example amongst other people. Okay, what better way to make someone an example than get the biggest person you could possibly get and make an example of them. And if you can do that,
scares everyone else.
Scares everyone else to even try and do the same thing. So I think that's the main reason. Just to,
it's crazy to me, because when you see like even like people in my hometown, they're just so like, BBC is good, the government is good, COVID was good.
What's
the
your hometown again?
Canterbury in Kent.
Okay.
So it's just, I mean,
UK.
I thought
you said Cardiff last time.
That's my brother.
Okay.
My brother's in Cardiff.
Okay.
But either way, UK wide, the majority of people are like, when the government says this, it's for our best interest. And but even when I was younger, I believed the school is good for me, following the system is good for me.
Yeah, we all got finessed.
We all got finessed. Then you just pay your taxes and get finessed again. But when you start to realize how things go behind. Like, you always just got to follow the money, and then you realize, okay, well, the media, that's not a government body, so is it impartial? No, it's partial to who's funding it. And then you kind of see those diagrams where it's like, who owns Sky, Fox, CNN, and all these things. It's like goes back to one entity, which is one man.
Yep.
And then you realize, well, this can be very easily manipulated and stuff. And I think that's probably what Tate says when he says the Matrix.
Yeah.
What have you understood as the Matrix? Because he's always tapping on it, but I've never got like a definition of the Matrix is this person or this family or this group.
So
what is that?
I've always believed in the Matrix, and the system. Obviously, I haven't named it as the Matrix, but that system.
I started believing it since 9/11. When I started to just see that stuff. So whenever that was, well, it was 9/11.
There's many other things.
That's when I started to be like, oh, this doesn't add up to me.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the people in charge of the world really want to control you. Yeah, and like I said, I'm a man of God. If we go back into it in Islam, once again, it's there as well. There are people that are opposing powers who are going to try and do the complete opposite of what God wants, right? And we see that happening all the time. We see them poisoning the media, brainwashing the masses, all these sort of things. And I knew from day dot, like, things that you see on media are most likely complete garbage in terms of what's happened in 2020 or what's happening recently, whatever the thing is, right? Well, especially if we're talking about Palestine and Israel, like, do you know what I mean? What
It's
media
obvious.
portrays
It's obvious,
is completely different from the truth, right? So you got to look at it like that. What's the actual agendas here and everything? And at the end of the day, it's just literally to scare people, to control people so they can shape the world as they want it in the future, which is it's just that's a rabbit hole that we could go into.
I mean, one thing that I can ask, which is unique to you on that topic, is you have a platform, and as do I. And do you feel any kind of way of, like, for example, I don't do much, to be honest, and maybe wrongfully so, I don't use my platform in the best way for that specific reason, but I do my part. So when I flew to London just to do the march, so I flew all the way, did the march in central London for Palestine, and then flew back to Dubai because there was nothing going on here. I don't even know why, but I never used and I posted about it, so that was something I post here and there. But I've seen you've been a lot more vocal than I have. How do you view that situation of not just the Matrix, but also wars and the Ummah and your platform?
Well, if we're talking about what's specifically going on in Palestine and Israel, what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. And what we see right now is genocide, and obviously that's completely wrong. And what's furthermore wrong is the fact that the media portray it as a two-sided war.
A war.
Yeah, they say it in the news all the time. A war, a conflict, the conflict between Gaza and Israel. It's not conflict, bruv. It's genocide. It's literally mass
it's men
murder.
with sticks defending their kids.
Literally.
Not an army,
and we've seen videos of, I remember seeing this video of, it wasn't even too long ago, the guy walking up with a white flag, resembling peace. And they just shot him one time. He's asking for peace, and they just shot him there and then in cold blood. That just kind of shows you the kind of what we're dealing with here. But have you ever seen that video on the news? No. And you won't see it on the news either, because that shows in itself the truth. But they're going to paint the picture exactly how they want to paint the picture. But the reason why everyone else speaks about it, including myself, is because you have to, bro. You have to. If the news aren't going to do this, you need to make people more aware of this, because there are people out in the world who are going to say the typical thing of, I don't know what's going on in the world, therefore I don't want to speak about it. Well, you do know, because many people around you are going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
And, looking at it religiously as well, one of the things we're going to be questioning is, what do we do to stand up against this?
That's what I was going to say. When it first was happening, everybody jumped on it, which was a good thing. Like, everyone was posting about it, talking about it, and that's what it deserved. And I don't like to be a bandwagon guy. Like, if I wasn't talking about it last year, why am I going to talk about it now just because everyone else is? And that was my stance, wrongfully. And then you posted exactly what you just said. You were like, we're going to be asked on the day of the judgment, if you couldn't go and do something, if you didn't go and give charity, did you at least say something? And we'll be asked on that. So
Did you speak up?
That's what I did. It was actually a few days after you did.
Especially for people with platforms like us, how can we not speak up?
Yeah,
We've
especially
built this
being
following.
Muslims, yeah.
We've built this following, or pretty much God's given us this following. And if we don't do it and use it in the right way, it's like speaking up for people in Palestine, Gaza, what are we doing? Otherwise, that's just selfish of us. Do you know what I mean? And that's our test.
And just like, putting it back, like Tate is being tested by the Matrix, and his test is imprisonment. Okay, we won't get imprisoned, but we're tested by like, is it going to affect anything business-wise? Are we scared to make money now because of an audience opinion and so forth? That was our test, actually. Interesting. When it comes to the Islamic side, I've noticed you are, obviously there's the personal side, which I'm sure you're doing, but also you... the moment it seems like you were a bit more financially able to, you've done Umrah a few times this year, or last year, let's say. And then also I've seen you done charity trips as well. And that's something I've never done. Talk to me about that, because charity is one of those things, like it's very easy to just send money, and we all do that. Zakat and also voluntarily. Ramadan, we get a bit more active. But there's another thing, going and using your hands and doing aid. And I've seen you do it on your stories a few times. What were those trips that you've done?
To be fair with you, I've only done it one time. That was it was in Ramadan last year. And that felt like such a blessing, because I'd just done Umrah, and then 2 weeks later I'd gone to this charity trip. This charity trip, being completely honest with you, it's not something that I had done before, nor is it something that I actually signed up for. But one of my friends in London, he owns the charity pretty much, and he said to me, look, do you want to come? There's a few of the other brothers going, people that I know. I was like, yeah, of course I'd come. Like, I'd want to do it. Like, why would I not?
Where was it?
But it was in Turkey. So this is when all the earthquakes going on and everything, and people had lost their homes. People had no food. They didn't have nothing to survive. They didn't have no hygiene, etc. The list goes on, right? So we went there with the purpose of, helping these people out, whether it be shelter, food, water, supplies for women, hygiene, all that sort of stuff, right? And that in itself, as you mentioned there, there's one thing given to charity, donating money online. And don't get me wrong, we feel some type of way. We're like, okay, alhamdulillah, we've given charity. But actually taking your time out to give this glass of water to someone who hasn't got a glass of water, that feels insane. Like, you actually feel a deep connection in your heart with A, God, and B, for the people around the world, and it humbles you massively.
The gratitude you get back.
The gratitude you get back, and the feeling like you all I could think about in that moment is what I could say is this, yeah. I'm giving this person a glass of water. They haven't got a glass of water, but at home, I have a tap. I just turn on, water comes instantly. I have a car, I have roof, I have a bed, I have bed sheets, all that sort of stuff. And it just puts you in such a humble position, because even if people who are watching this right now aren't financially up there or anything like that, most chances are they're probably still sleeping in a bed in a home. Whether they're paying rent or whatever the case is, forget all that sort of stuff. But the fact is, you have a home, you have a roof over your head, you have a bed, and these guys don't. Do you know what I mean? And that was just Turkey because of the earthquakes. And then all I could think about is, what about people in the rest of the world? People in Lebanon, people in Gaza, and all that sort of stuff, right? They have nothing, not just because of earthquake, but because of governments and all these other entities and all that sort of stuff. And it humbles you massively, man. But I'm definitely trying to go on more charity trips this year. Going to tell you to come along 100% as well.
I will, bro. I will.
But it's insane, bro. Like,
it's also interesting because you reminded me of Turkey, which was, when was that, a year ago, the earthquake?
Yeah.
Things happen so fast and the media moves so quick, and my memory, that we all forget these kind of things, but the repercussions of that, they're probably still suffering right now.
Yeah.
And they had like a hot moment where people were sending aid, but now there's somewhere else that needs aid. What happened to those people and all the other places where there's wars right now? Eyes are on Palestine, yes, but there's other wars and other genocides and other issues.
Things going on in the world.
Yeah, we just forget. And the main takeaway is the gratitude we have. Like, we're not in a genocide, we're not in a war zone. We're just we have our
that's
our
why we
stability.
got to be so grateful for what we got. The fact that we can be in Dubai right now, or the fact that we're in the UK living comfortably, you have to be grateful. You can't ever take it for granted, because God can take that away from us in a split second if we ain't grateful. So always be grateful.
When I was living in the UK, charity and these kind of things, obviously we do it. Well, when I was in the UK, I was younger, so I wasn't even doing it. I was a kid. But it's something we're taught to do. We know why it's valuable, and we always are told by our parents, like, be grateful for what you have and so forth. And then you see the things online and it reinforces that. And then people are assuming when you come to Dubai, you're in this luxury bubble and you're just so far away from anything that you probably feel like you're out of touch with the world. And I thought that would happen to me too. But we're both from Pakistan. we know that the majority of the labor force in Dubai is actually Pakistani.
Pakistani or Indians, yeah.
And I mentioned this not too long ago on a pod where it was, I have a balcony, and the building opposite me is constructing right now.
Yep.
It's just finished actually. So over the last year,
I know what you're talking about,
including Ramadan, it was a construction site. And
Yep.
I remember, bro, summers here are hot.
Yeah,
and,
bro, I
and
remember,
fasting
yeah.
here is hot.
Yeah.
And they're all Pakistani, I know
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I saw every day 6 a.m. like the night shift people leaving, and then the new day shift coming in, and then the masjid that I go to, which is in the
Right
Rixos,
opposite, yeah.
right below. The workers are coming because the neighboring building I'm coming,
Yeah.
and we're standing shoulder to shoulder. And obviously they've been out in the sun. You can smell
Yeah,
that
yeah.
they've been there. But first of all, the beauty of a masjid, like we're all equal in that jamaat, in that line. Is people that are literally got Ferraris downstairs, and then there's a guy who's earning like probably £500 a month
Yep.
next to each
Next
other in
to each other,
congregation, which is beautiful. But not only that, we do get a bit almost when you're first in Dubai, like it's a bit of a shock, like the class divide you almost sense, the passport power which you sense, but over time people get desensitized to it. And when I arrived, I was like, I can never be desensitized to the benefit I've been given, because the only difference between me and them, and I say this to myself every day when I see them on the balcony, is my dad moved to the UK, their dad didn't. And if my dad didn't move to the UK, I would be there probably, because I'm not from a wealthy family.
That's true.
Just my grandparents' generation was farmers and stuff.
Yeah.
So
we'd be one of them, or we'd be one of the
I'd
taxi
be
drivers.
struggling.
We'd be
Yeah,
something
we'll
like
be
that, yeah.
something. Like if I was born in Pakistan, unless I had a great education and could do something, I'd be like just the rest of them. And most of them are looking for any opportunity. And I discussed this with a friend. I was like, this is what I'm seeing, and it makes me feel grateful, and the emotion I was going through, and it's powerful, because one thing is like seeing workers, another thing is seeing workers from your country and knowing you could have been there. It was just God that changed your path. And my friend said to me, but maybe he'll have the last laugh. I was like, what do you mean? He was like, because everyone has a test in life, and right now you're chilling on the balcony and you're not sweating away all day, you're in AC. But maybe that hardship is his journey to paradise, and yours on the balcony, yes, you're good for now, but it's like your test is a bit of money. And if you're not acting accordingly, or maybe with our platform acting accordingly, that's our test. And maybe he's on a fast track to paradise, whereas we might not be if we don't act accordingly to our test.
It's true.
And that for me now, that comment from my friend stuck in my head, and always just seeing every day 6 a.m. a group of Pakistanis coming to work. For me, being in Dubai, as counterproductive as it sounds, or counterintuitive, it's reinforced the gratitude for the world. Even if you're surrounded by supercars every day, it's just seeing your people in that kind of environment. And I want to touch on another thing, because we just did my episode, me being a guest on your show.
I just want to say something on the back of that as well. I think what you're saying there, I think it all depends on how you're raised. Because if you've been raised in a way where you don't have an understanding for that side of life, and you take things for granted, and you're not appreciative of what you have and all that sort of stuff, you may never look at the labourers like, oh, these lot are feeling a different type of life. You just might it might not even occur to you. But I think alhamdulillah, it seems like your parents have raised you right, where you actually have an understanding for these guys have got it tough. They're from the same place as I was. I could once be in their shoes. Fast track to Jannah, all that sort of stuff. I think it all depends on how you're raised, because I was in the same position as well, where.
But in the UK, you're not in touch with it at all.
You're
in
not
the
in
UK,
touch
it's
with it,
just
no.
whatever.
Yeah. But like, to give you an example there, that same building, I was at the hotel next door at the pool, and that building obviously right there, you could see the construction. And I think the same thing, like, how am I here and they're there? What's the difference? There is no difference. The only difference is, as you mentioned, the fact that we moved to the UK, they were still there, and they've just come here looking for opportunities, and that's what they could land basically. And I don't know if you've had any conversations with taxi drivers and all that sort of stuff.
All the
typical
time,
thing is when you get in
All
the
from
taxi, it's
Pakistan,
like, oh, where are you from, brother?
Yeah.
Pakistan. And then they start telling you the whole life story. And I ask them, like, when's the last time you've been home? And they'll be like, oh,
Always
like
a
6
couple
years
years,
ago,
yeah.
or something like that. And you ask them why, and it comes down to the simple fact of they can't afford to go home. They can't afford a plane ticket or anything like that. And it's sad because
They got kids.
they've got kids, they've got whole families. They're trying to bring their families over here. They're looking for opportunities. They're here working for their people back home. And it's sad to see, man. It's sad to see.
Yep. The other thing I wanted to pivot onto, because since we last shot together, I did an Umrah recently, and we discussed before I left, like you were kind of outlining how your experience was and so forth. And I want to touch on that because I don't know if you spoke about it on camera, but what for me, you gave me some advices, and one thing that I didn't prep was like how quick things pass by, that you don't have time to. I thought I'm there for a couple of days, I'm going to just be sitting and thinking and praying, but like you're moving and it's quick. So it was good I prepared like a list of things I wanted to pray for and what I wanted to ask for.
You done your dua list, yeah?
Yeah, because when I saw your dua list, I was like, okay, I probably should do that, because I thought I have my duas in my head, I'll figure it out. Like, no, if you don't have them prepped, time flies. But yeah, you mentioned to me what happened to you, and I don't know if you want to speak about it, like the dua list you had and how things quickly played out for you, which is insane. Because we all know the power of dua, and we know that not a single dua doesn't go unanswered. Whether it's not answered in this world, then it's answered at some point, or if it's not answered because it wasn't best for you, but there's always an answer. And then doing it in God's house in Saudi, it's not going to go unanswered. But it's cool, it's crazy to see like you asked for certain things and then how quickly it happened right after your Umrah, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so to give people context as well, what I'm explaining to you as well is at the end of the... I'll explain all this in a second actually. So yeah, let me put it in timeline order. So this is the third time I've gone Umrah now in the last year, alhamdulillah. So, but it was the first time with the boys and I felt ever so grateful, especially going with my brother Mikey because he's a revert as well. So it just felt like
sharing the experience. The first ones you did was alone, or? First
one I did was in March 2022. That was with my family.
Okay.
Just my immediate family. Then in October, I went with all of my family. There was like 25 of us. Extended family, uncles, cousins, everyone, literally the whole shebang. And then third time just now with all the boys. There's about 6-7 of us.
I love that you do that, by the way. It's like an annual trip or a few times a year. Bro, it's something I've been living in Dubai 3 years and I never went.
Yeah.
And then I thought to myself, well, my brother brought it up. I was like, why would I not? It's a 2-hour flight. It's so cheap to do.
Bro,
like, why would I not?
I will make it an annual thing now. Or anytime someone says, yo, let's go Umrah, then I'll go. If it's financially liable to do so. Because if someone asked me in Ramadan last 10 days, I don't know about that because the hotels are like 10 grand for a whole week.
Know that. Okay,
yeah, it's
fair
mental.
enough.
But anyway, going back to the point of Umrah duas, bro, it's just, this is why I said to you as well, write a list of duas, because when you see the Kaaba for the first time, you're going to forget everything you wanted to wish for in your head. This time when I wrote my list of duas because I hadn't done that previously, and every time I didn't do that, I had lost of what I wanted to say. But I was like, okay, I want to be very specific with my duas. So one of my duas was, Allah, please forgive my sins, bring me closer to you, make me more charitable, etc. Going down the list, and then eventually it was like, I want to get this Andrew Tate podcast. And my main reason for doing a podcast with him is because he's now a Muslim. So I wanted to just speak to him about Islam, and also I see it as a form of dawah, like you're spreading the message of Islam.
It definitely is, yeah.
Even giving him the Quran the last time, I felt like did spread a bit more Islam because that clip went viral. I'm not saying I'm the root of it, but I'm just saying like I do like the messages of spreading Islam, like conversations about Islam in general. So anyway, that was one of my duas. And bro, I just emailed him. I emailed him before doing Umrah, and he replied, I think it was a day after I had completed my Umrah, after I had done that dua. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Like, can you do it before?
You said you were also chasing him for a few months, but he was just busy.
Yeah, so I initially chased him in November 2023. That's what year it just went. Then he was like, hit me up in New Year's. So I hit him up in New Year's. Then he was like, hit me up in February. And I was like, okay, I'm going Umrah though. So let me just hit him up anyway. I was like, gee, look, I'm going Umrah. First and foremost, I know you can't leave Romania right now. So if you have any duas or prayers you want me to ask Allah, like I'm here, I'll do it for you. No problem. And secondly, when you want to line up this podcast, he appreciated the fact that I asked him for Umrah and if he wants any duas. And secondly, he replied saying, can you do it before the 20th of February? I was like, you best believe I can, bro. I'm there 100%. I already got the Dubai book, but forget about that right now. I'm coming to Romania. And just off the back of that, it just made me think like, yo, like, alhamdulillah, if you ask God for something, you 9 times out of 10, well, God says, I'll ask your duas, I'll answer your duas in 3 ways. Yes, but not now, or no, because I've got better plans for you. And that is like for a fact, just full on truth. And so at the end of this Andrew Tate podcast is what I was going to say, just spread more of the message of Islam. I'm literally going to screenshot my Umrah duas list and put it at the end and just be like, believe in the power of Allah. Because
just to figure or get it properly, you were lining it up for him and his schedules weren't aligning. He's a busy man. Then you went for Umrah and I saw your dua list. It's on your notes on your phone.
Yeah.
And it was on there and I saw it. I was like, oh, how interesting. And then how soon after your Umrah did that message and everything line up?
Within 2 weeks. No. Within a few days. Sorry. Within 2 weeks it actually happened.
Yeah.
But within 2 days of me doing that dua, that confirmation was there. All booked, lined up, everything like that. And it was mad because I just thought to myself, I'd literally just left the house of Allah and now these duas are coming true. Like that's insane. If no one can ever tell me that God doesn't exist or anything like that. I was
just about to say that for maybe a non-Muslim viewer, they're like, coincidence and Tate just replied. No. But there's so many stories just like this that I know of friends around me, so many of right after an Umrah, right after a Hajj. And it's like this. It's not the eyes that are blind. It's the heart.
It's the hearts. Yeah, literally.
You can't see all of this.
That saying is so true. Bro. I've seen it so many times in personal life as well, where it's like the eyes are blind, but the hearts. It's not the eyes that are blind, but it's the hearts. Yeah. And I've seen it so many times. I'm just like, raw. It's crazy, bro.
You know, now that you've spoke to Tate when he was very girls and hook up and that kind of message that he had, now he's reverted and now he's got a more. Well, I don't know his opinion on women because he hasn't really spoken about it. What is? Did you get a chance to speak about like topics of marriage or how he views having multiple partners and the kind of alpha stuff he was talking about before?
I don't want to say anything that he wouldn't have said, so I can't comment too much on about it. But what I can say is, just from knowing him, and especially him being a Muslim now as well, is that he has a respect for women, and you can see that as well because he has, I believe he has a daughter, but he also has a woman as well, and he definitely has a respect for women as well. So
that was always clear. It was just his abrasive way of saying things that gave off a message. But yeah, my point was more like, how have you seen a change in him? Not necessarily women, but in general, just now being a revert in your experience, because you met him right before and after.
I think Allah just brings you closer to him, and I think that's exactly what's happened with Tate. I think his message, if anything, now is more clear for him, because he has more of an understanding with Islam and everything he was saying. This is why the reason why I gave him the Quran in the first place was because everything he says, forget all the the stuff you see on the clips, but his message overall aligns with the message of Islam, right? And the principles and stuff. As I said, forget the clips and the mad ones you see because that's out of context. But that's why I gave him the Quran, and so I think that's obviously the reason why he reverted. And I think from reading the Quran in jail, he's probably had more of an understanding of, okay, like this, like what I say and what the Quran is, it's like aligned. So I feel like he's become closer to God. And just even on the podcast, we were speaking about Islam and all that. And he's very clever and he picks up things quite quickly in the sense of, he will say like some phrases that Allah says in the Quran. He'll say things like how many days and weeks there are, that Allah mentions month 12 times. We were talking about the ratio of land to water, which Allah mentions in the Quran as well. We were speaking about these different things, and he has an understanding for it. And that you can only get an understanding for if you're actually a true believer.
No, people have also said like his conversion was fake. He was trying to hop on the bandwagon of, he knows the Muslim community is a strong one. So if he gains that fan base, then it's a power move. People are saying that, and so that is basically...
Yeah, no, you can't say that at all, bro.
You can't fake the knowledge that he wouldn't go out the way to learn these things if it wasn't
especially
sincere.
if a Muslim is saying, oh no, he just converted for marketing reasons.
I've heard that.
Bro, if a Muslim is saying that, you cannot be saying that, bro, because you are not one to judge. You got to question your own actions and your own wording before you even say that. Do you know what I mean?
It's true.
I've heard Muslims say that as well. And I'm just like, bro, who are you to judge? Allah's the only judge out here.
You know, it's interesting. I think he even said it in a pod where it was like, people would be thrown in jail and be like depressed and the life is over, whatever. And he kind of framed his mind to say, well, now I have time to read the Quran, which with my life I would have never got round to it. And he just reverted. Now he's got time to learn about what he just reverted to. So
and now he's actually got the time to put in place and practice what he's learned about. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do feel like, in disguise, his jail was a blessing. It gave him time to read the Quran.
Do you think becoming a Muslim had anything to do with it? Or is that just more to the attack and ending up in jail and so forth? Or is that...
Oh, that I don't know.
Peripheral
Honestly,
thing?
Yeah, that I don't know.
You know what I've also noticed is like, not only has being a Muslim become more normalized, which has been a shift actually over the last few years, Tate has definitely had an effect on that, where it's gone from like normalized to almost cool. And I've seen so many like rappers revert or just celebs reverting all the time now, especially in Dubai. What do you think has been the Tate impact on the Islamic community or just the perception of Islam?
Definitely a big and positive impact, because I think for the people, the Muslims already knew, alhamdulillah, that Islam's the truth. But for the people who weren't Muslim already, maybe they're atheists or Christians, whatever it is, I've seen so many people revert. And many people off the back of me giving them a Quran, asking me, where do I get the Quran from? Where can I learn more?
Wow.
All that sort of stuff. So I think his reversion opened the eyes of the masses. And I'm not going to say he's the reason why Islam is at the top now, but I think it definitely has a part in it, because Islam has grown massively as well, and he's been a big influence in Islam and the community and the growth of it. So I think yeah.
We've spoken a lot about Andrew. What was your experience like with Tristan? Because you spent just as much as time with both of them, and he's he has his own story. He's his own man, and he hasn't done the same things. He hasn't reverted, but he's been through the same experiences of jail and so forth. How's your experience with Tristan been?
Tristan's a good guy, man. I like Tristan a lot. That was the first time I met him in Romania, but I think he's actually a G. And the vibe I got for him was the fact that they've still both got the looting in them.
Oh yeah,
yeah. But I think Tristan, he's I don't know how to explain it. He's just a cool guy. Just like I feel like I could easily have conversation with him, chill with him. We were talking, me, him, and the team once again for about an hour after the podcast. We were just talking about life, growing up in Luton, fights, this and that. Like he has a very, very relatable background to all of us. Growing up in London, all we knew was fights or whatever the case is, girls, blah blah blah, all this sort of thing. So he has the exact same experiences, and just talking to him about that was pretty cool, to be fair. And even on the podcast, that was all free flow. So Andrew's podcast was all planned. I had questions and all that sort of stuff. Tristan's I didn't so much, because that was organised the night before of the podcast. So that was just catch up, find out who he is and all that sort of stuff. And then when I was talking to him, I was like, this guy's sick, bro. This guy's sick.
Tristan doesn't get enough credit for how intelligent he is.
Yeah.
Obviously, by design, he's happy to allow himself to be in the shadow of his brother, which is noble in itself. But not only that, he's so smart because he's well read. He knows so much about history, and you could talk to him about conspiracy, he would know. You could talk about any religion, he would know. And that the way to just pick information and then throw an analogy as he does, he's both of them incredible communicators.
People, yeah.
We've spoken a lot about the Tates, but obviously that's not just your show. You've had a bunch of guests on, and I've watched a fair few. Do you have a favorite guest?
No.
Is that because it's like asking who's your mum or your dad?
Kid, yeah, literally asking who's your favorite mum or dad. You can't.
Fair enough. But there's a few ones that stood out to me. There was the billionaire from Dubai, Saigon, if I pronounce his name correctly.
Yep.
That one was a killer episode, and then also the CEO of Brabus, which didn't get enough views, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But that one is also like, I didn't know who that guy was. Like I know Brabus obviously, but I didn't know who it was or how big of a company it actually is. More to ask you then, you've done a lot of you've had a spectrum of guests where you've had the more road kind of person, then you've had the billionaire, then you've also had a very professional kind of person. When you have this breadth of people on a show, and they're all successful, some are hyper successful, some are just very successful, but nonetheless, and they're all from different cultures, backgrounds, religions, ethnicities, you've had a huge variety. Have you found common denominators between them all of they all are different, they all have different businesses, but they all are like this, they all have this kind of mindset? Have you found anything common between them?
You just mentioned it there, pretty much, the hustler mindset, the fact that they never gave up and they stayed consistent in exactly what they were doing, and having the main thing, the self-belief that they'll one day be this big person or this big entrepreneur or make it in this industry. I think it all comes down to that, because the people who lack that, that's what separates them from the real top G's, the entrepreneurs and all that sort of stuff, right? So a common trait but within all of them is literally just consistency and having that mindset to succeed, and working every single hour of the day and making sure everything they do is the right move, and furthermore, analysing where they went wrong, analysing where they went right, and being able to repeat that several times. And yeah, a lot of it is literally just down to that, pretty much, I'd say.
All these guests you've had, you've not only seen the online content, which is why you reach out to them, you've also had in-person time with them. Now, before I started mine, this one, Titans of Tomorrow, I was a big consumer of podcasts, just like I watched most of yours. I watched most of every show. I listen to like 1 or 2 a day. I don't listen to music or I don't watch Netflix, but I listen to podcasts all the time.
That's the reason why I started my one as well.
Yeah, and that for me was like, I not only, it's hard to explain this, but like when you read a book, there's certain things you take away from it and you can do right away. The other thing is like, it just shapes your mind a little bit. And then let's say you read 100 books. After reading 100 books, let's say you didn't have like bullet points of what you want to do or what you learned, your mind will be different. Let's call it like a paradigm shift. And I know like consuming hundreds of podcasts that I have, over time that has changed things about me, my thoughts, my beliefs, my vocabulary. I don't know, it just shapes you. And I knew that is power through just listening and watching.
Yep.
And I always wondered, and I'm exploring that in my own experience, but going from listening and viewing and consuming content that way versus being in the room with these kind of people, have you learned anything or benefited anything from like being in the room with these kind of people and the off-camera moments and stuff? Do you think that's benefited your own journey, your own growth, beyond just like consuming online?
Tough question, because what you see is what you get online, but meeting him in person also has some sort of effect, because what you come to realize is they're normal people. They're exactly the same as me. They're exactly the same as you. They've just done something a bit different to make him in the positions they are in. And so when you speak to them on the podcast off camera and just understand more of them as a person, and you realize, okay, this is what you've done, or that's where I can learn from you, or I've been trying to do this the whole time and you've done it, like, what can I learn from you? I think obviously in-person interactions are way better than anything else, because if I'm listening to a podcast, it's not exactly like I can ask that person a question. I have to rely on the guest. But if you speak to them directly and you have them in person and just pick their brain, bro, there's so much you can learn from people. It's unreal. And I've learned so much from so many people, probably more so than people I haven't had on the podcast. What we've got to realize as well is I know way more people off the podcast now than actually guests on the podcast, if that makes sense, right?
Just through association and mutuals.
Through association, from people knowing who CEOCAST is, from all that sort of stuff.
True, like I came up to you because of the pod, and I bumped into you in the mosque. Yeah,
and because of that, I've been able to get in the room with so many people and pick their brain and just understand the way their life works, what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And by the end of it, if you do that for a year straight, or in this case 4.5 years, you have this whole information book from over 500 people, whatever the case is, and you can kind of give answers or find answers for any question you have, even if it's something I may not know now. I'll give you an example. Everyone's talking about this crypto bull run and all that sort of stuff. I've met a crypto guy. I've met 10 crypto guys. Just literally ask them all, find a collective opinion and all that sort of stuff. And there's so many ways it could change your life. Like, I can't remember myself as characteristically how I was before CEOCAST to now. I feel like they're two completely different Raheems.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I can't even remember how I was then. I knew I had this mindset to some extent, but not to how I have now. And
was this your goal with the pod? Like when you were first starting it 4 years ago, what was your objective with it, if you had one?
To start a business.
Okay.
That was it. Start a business. This became the business, and alhamdulillah, I couldn't be more grateful for that. But
because for me it was I already had certain things going on, so starting the podcast for me wasn't like a strategic move. It was costing me money, but what you've just said, I've heard people say, and even just through your content, I've always wondered to myself of like, what could I learn? And that thing that you just said of not only opening up doors, the opportunity to ask questions you want to ask. So many times, because I listen to so many, I've been like, I wish you asked that. Or I was like, why would you not ask about that? That's what that guest is known for. And then I'm just like, then I have to go search that guest and find more podcasts about him. And for me, it's been like, for example, just to throw one, Sean Hanif, he's a CEO of Genflow.
Yep. Familiar
And
with Sean,
not the hugest guy on social media, but he's worth $100 million.
Yeah.
And annoyingly, one of my most successful guests, one of my least viewed episodes.
Have you had him on?
Yeah, I had him
Okay.
on. So such is life, eh? The more successful ones don't get the credibility that they deserve.
It's true, bro. It's true. I've had incredible.
I know, bro,
guests,
and that's why I say, like, I've watched most of them, and your views don't correlate with the value of the episode always.
Yeah.
But yeah, on that situation, he's a busy man. He's worked with huge influencers, Logan Paul, KSI, Iman Gaji. He's worked with the biggest names, and he's got a super successful business. He's got multiple offices, like well-established man, young man, from our background, from the UK, from I think a Pakistani descent, if I'm not wrong. Normal, relatable guy. He rocks up here, and you just see he's a regular guy. He's just switched on, and he's just worked hard. But I didn't notice him like he's a once in a generation genius. I didn't notice like he has like nothing stood out of like this is why. It was just he worked hard. He was consistent. He was strategic in what he did, choosing the opportunities. But not just that. When I did the podcast with him, I was asking questions about his business and this and that for the audience, and then halfway through, I just realized, well, I'm in the room with him, and I realized he knows so much about social media. He knows how much about content. I was like, I turned into a mastermind for myself.
Bro, this is what I say to everyone who has a podcast, who runs a podcast. Do it for yourself and be selfish in a not in a bad way, but just be selfish. Because say me and you are here right now. Alhamdulillah, my podcast is somewhat successful. You have the opportunity right now to pick my brain and ask me anything I want. And even when I have guests on the podcast, it gets to a point where yes, I'm asking questions on behalf of the research that I've done and the audience and what they want to know, but also out of natural curiosity. I don't know, I haven't got 10 out of 10 knowledge about trading, but if I can ask you about trading, or if I can ask Riz, how does this work? How does that work? It literally just becomes natural curiosity. And that's why sometimes you see podcasts, they don't seem natural. They just do podcasts with this script. They do podcasts with a person because they see this person popping online, but they have no interest in what this person actually does. They just see, okay, I'm going to get views from this. Let's see if it works. And that's what never works, because the audience knows that you are not
curious.
You're not actually interested in what my man's saying or what this person's saying. You know what I mean? And so whenever I do a podcast, it's always been people who I'm actually genuinely curious about. That's why I've done it with Rabbits, because yes, I love the cars. Yes, and all that, they're sick in what they do. But I was just curious as to be like,
how do they live?
Where does this actually all come from? Why do you want to customize cars? Do you know what I mean? What difference does it make?
True, yeah.
How do you market this? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many different questions you can ask. And that's a prime example of a podcast that has massive amounts of value and gets the least amount of views. And it's sad because it's the day and age we're living in where people love the glitz and glamour and all that sort of stuff, and especially podcasts, but they're not so highly, it's a small majority of population, but they're not so highly interested in the value that the person has to bring, right? So
well, there's also a thing of like I think people consume podcasts for entertainment when it's not. It's an opportunity to learn. And for me now, doing it in person and I can navigate the questioning, I just realized halfway through the episode with Sean, I was like, well, if I wanted an hour of his time, as successful as he is, he wouldn't charge me 1k. For his time, it's like probably 10k an hour. And he's not going to get out of bed for 5k because it's not worth it for him. It's not an arrogance thing, it's an access thing. So if I wanted to just get coaching on my podcast from him, who's a social media expert, you'd have to pay up or invite him for a podcast, have a conversation, have a nice time. Now you got WhatsApp numbers and you stay in touch. And that's been, I don't know what people perceive the podcast as, but it's not a money thing at all. I've made no money from this podcast, but I've made so many contacts, and lessons, and asking questions from somebody that's ahead of me in life in a certain area, and asking me exactly what I want to ask that can benefit my situation specifically. Now they're in my WhatsApp, and now I'm intentional with that. I want to ask you this on like what you do post show. For example, I'm always knowing that these guys that have gone on a podcast, they've gone on a bunch of podcasts. I need to stand out. And I've understood like networking is not you met them once and you got their number, because why are they going to reply to you if you don't have anything in common or any impact there? So I always try to like introduce each other my mutual guest and introduce them, because they're both high level people. If they met each other through me, they'll remember that. Or host a dinner, or just send some love.
As
or
you said on the podcast, you always,
stay in touch. Stay in touch, and then because you never know. So when you need them one day, you send them a WhatsApp. If you have not spoke to them since the pod, well, they're probably going to be like, "What do you want?" If you stay in touch, it's worthwhile. And that for me has been the benefit, because as you said, not only have I been able to access rooms through association, I'm able to access the room, because I'm not able to get these guys for a dinner randomly, but if I invite them for a podcast, well, now I've had a conversation. And for me, it's been sick to establish myself in Dubai, because I've been able to, it's just little things of, if these kind of guests have followed my Insta, and I reach out to another one, they'll see the mutuals and be like, oh, who's this guy? And then you snowball like that. But yeah, what is your post podcast, if you have a process, or what is your experience
there's
like?
no set process in terms of systems in place and do all this and all of that, but I do my best to stay in touch with the people that I've been on the podcast with, or have some sort of connection or relationship with them, right? Sometimes it doesn't always work out. Sometimes the guest goes their way, I go my way, but 98% of the time we become friends, we chill, we hang out, we've got similar backgrounds, find stuff relatable, same interests. So if that person likes cars, I'm into cars, they buy 812 Superfast, for example. Chrono bought, he's bought so many cars, I can't even list just one car.
Umrah just bought one as well, I saw.
Yeah, exactly. Umrah as well. So it's like, raw, that car's sick, let's link up, see the car, let's go out for shisha, let's go out for a meal. It's never a set thing of, I must do this. It's just like, I don't know, it just becomes a natural thing of just keeping people sweet, I suppose. And you keep people sweet, you keep everyone sweet, and only good things can come from it. And yeah, it's been like that with majority of people I've had on the podcast. I've become friends with them, built great relationships with them, and I think maybe that's the reason why the podcast has got where it's got to, because if I didn't have the connections with some of the people I've had on the podcast, I may not have podcasts with other people. I'll give you an example. I've done a podcast with Chrono. Off the back of that podcast, I've done a podcast with Mr. Hubler. Now, someone like Mr. Hubler wouldn't jump on my podcast if Chrono had given him bad words about me.
True.
Do you know what I mean? So if you just keep them people sweet and all that sort of stuff, the line's endless. For example, another one example, if me and you done a podcast, which we done, and we never stayed in touch or anything like that since then, and you had someone on the podcast that I wanted to get on, and I said, I popped up to you randomly.
Away now,
I messaged you randomly after 2 years. Yo, Waqar, what are you saying? Can you help me get this podcast on? You might feel some type of way about it, but he's only messaging me because of this. But if we have a great relationship, and friendship in general,
normal. It's normal to help
it's like,
each
yo,
other
can
out,
I help you? Can you help me? All that sort of stuff. So it's just life's better like that when you stay in touch with everyone.
Well, there's from the UK. There's you're up there in terms of big shows, but there's leagues, let's say, where there's the big shows like yours, and then there's like the mainstream shows like a Diary of a CEO and the Chris Williamson, for example. Do you desire to be in that upper echelon, or not really? Because they're like the millions of subscribers.
Don't get me wrong, everyone wants a million subscribers or millions of subscribers, but to be like them, probably not. Because I see that just seems way too corporate for me. I've always wanted to keep it, within the community. This is just a big community podcast, but that almost seems too big. Don't get me wrong, that would make more sense money-wise, financially wise, and all that sort of stuff. But it also comes with a lot more stress. It also comes with a lot more
big teams. Like Diary of a CEO is like
teams,
just
team of 34, 40, whatever
just the trailers is 2 people full time for a trailer.
Exactly,
It's a full production.
Exactly, and they spend ages on it and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, I can be inspired by them, and I aspire to be on somewhat of that level, have a big team and all that sort of stuff. But I'd like being within the community and staying in touch, and having the not too corporate-y people come on as guests, people with relatable backgrounds, people with people from the same area as me, people this and that. I think when you get to that level of big boy guests and big boy celebrities, influencers and all that sort of stuff, or whatever the case may be, I do think you do lose a bit of your core following, because it's like, now you're too far gone.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
It's like the same with, I remember this in school and stuff. You have your underground rappers, and you always have that one person saying, oh, this guy's sick, because he's an underground rapper. The second when that underground rapper blows off, they don't speak about them that much. They go and find the next underground rapper. So I'm not trying to say I'm going to be the underground rapper forever, but it's the case of, I do like where I'm at. I like this sort of space. That space is good. I like it, but I much rather prefer the space that I'm in.
Do you have a dream guest or dream guests? Because you've already had so many, but if you're going to be doing this for years and years, you'll access pretty much with time whoever you want.
Yeah.
Do you have certain people that you're like, these are my dream ones?
I think a lot of them could be in America. I would love to get people like Grant Cardone, Alex Hormozi, Gary Vee, them sort of guys. I also would love to get loads of people in the UK who are big, people like Yanni or Daniel from Astral Aggregates.
Yes.
People like them. When you say dream guest, it's kind of hard to figure out and think about, because it's not someone. There's no one that I really like. Oh my god, I dream to have that on a podcast. I just go with the flow pretty much and just see who comes on and everything. I have goals of who I want to get on, but as for dream podcast, because when you say dream podcast, to me that's like towards the end of like the time. But
it's kind of like in my case, one of the names you mentioned, Hormozi, is because he's had such an influence on my learning and my journey. I just want to meet him and pick his brains more, because I've picked his brains online for so long. So that's someone I had in mind. But yeah, fair enough. Yeah, you've already accomplished a lot in your journey. You've had some big names, and maybe you don't have specific guests you want to target, but in general, because initially you were going to move to Dubai, that was in the works. Now you've got a studio in the UK. So it means like you want to stay in the UK for a bit longer and achieve more there. What is 2024 goals for yourself and the show?
2024 goals for myself, and the first things first, tripling myself or quadrupling myself financially, or CEOCAST, shall we say, not myself, but CEOCAST. So that's in motion, that's in the works. Second thing is definitely go to a trip to America this year.
US tour, yeah.
I want to spend about a month over there and just tour the whole US and basically just do podcast galore out there. What else does 2024 look like? My lease ends soon for the studio, so I'm gonna, if it makes sense to, then I'll get a bigger space, but that all depends if I want to come to Dubai or not.
Yeah.
If not, then I'll just keep that same space. Well, yeah, man, my thing is just keep going.
It's
growing.
interesting you didn't say a subscriber count, which says a lot about you.
Don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for the amount of subscribers that I've got, but I don't look at subscribers as like, this is the goal. Do you know what I mean? I'm grateful for 140k, but subscribers has never been my utmost priority thing. We must have 1 million subscribers and all that sort of stuff, because in reality, if we're talking about this business-wise, you don't make money from subscribers, you make money from views. So subscribers are...
It's just vanity.
It's just vanity, yeah.
For ego, yeah.
It's for, exactly, you couldn't have said it any better, it's for ego. And I'd like to say I haven't got much of an ego in that way. But yeah, that's
awesome, bro. Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you very much for letting me come on yours and then also joining me here.
I appreciate it.
It's been a lot of fun. Yeah. I enjoyed it, bro. So yeah, and supporting you from behind the scenes, and also now that we've connected, collabed a bit, any guest of mine is a WhatsApp away for you as well. And,
don't worry, bro. I'm gonna come for your guests as well.
Let's do it, bro. Let's do it. Oh yeah, as you go, I grow, bro. It's a win-win.
Exactly.
It's an and space, not all space, bro.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining.
I appreciate you having me, bro. Appreciate it.